My baby dolls, how are we all doing today? How's baseball season treating you? As always, I am your host, Ian Kahanowitz, and welcome to another great episode of Genesis coming up. And today, again, we talk baseball, but you know what? We move into the art world, right from the literary world, and we got a great show on, and we have the artist, Graig Kreindler, and he is one of the best, artists today that showcase baseball paintings, mainly historic, and we'll get into that discussion with him. I use a lot of Graig's paintings in my Ty Cobb and the Dead Ball era page, and also the historical Negro League page, because Graig paints a lot from that era, and for me, I use it as a tool to jog people to do research on that particular player through Graig's painting, because with painting, with all this material that Graig puts out, no one wants to read books today. I mean, I have all these authors on the show, but no one's going to sit down and read a 300-page book like they did years ago. The internet has made it so that you look at a picture, you get interested, and then you do a little research about that person to at least educate yourself. My thing is this: if you see a picture or a painting by artists like Graig, it should jog your mind to say, wow, that's Christy Mathewson, man. And you go back in time and you see what Christy Mathewson done as a time with the New York Giants, and how prolific he was as a pitcher, and you learn something, and more important, you go to Graig's site and you buy his paintings. And because that, all artists have to make a living. But what I want you folks to do is I want you to go to graigkreindler.com, and I'll spell it for you, GraigKreindler.com, and look at the website while you're listening to this show, because I'm going to go through a lot of his paintings. We're going to ask a lot of analytical questions, what he's thinking, what he's doing. It's just going to be a great show. We're going to get Graig on the show in about another 2 minutes. But as always, you are listening to the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network with the Zigzag Man, Ralph Tycho. And, of course, Ralph and I do a show on the New York Giants every Tuesday at 1. And that's a lot of fun. We do both the New York Giants, San Francisco Giants. I was asked to do the show with him. It's a pleasure going through Giants baseball history, focusing on the players, managers, coaches that defined the Giants for the last 120 years. So I'm having fun with that. I also going to be seen on David Nemec's old-time baseball and trivia. And, of course, we have huge Sabre baseball historian Alan Blumkin, and I joined both him and David Nemec, who has authored, I think, over 40 baseball books from the 1960s right up until recently. And we have a show, and right now we're going through decade by decade. We're up to 1952, again after the shot heard around the world with Bobby Thompson's home run, and that's a lot of fun too. And as always, I try to educate folks, and art and authors, and talking about this material helps people see what baseball has become through the past, because it's such a different game today. And as I turn to Graig Kreindler, his art speaks to me. It speaks to a lot of people. And as a bio, Graig Kreindler, born in 1980. Hey, he's 10 years younger than me. Grew up in Rockland County. All the big shots that grew up in Rockland County. I grew up right in the ghetto in Brooklyn, New York. In 2002, he graduated with honors from the School of Visual Arts in New York City with a BFA in illustration, and received his master's in art education from Lehman College. Now, just a little, side note, the School of Visual Arts is where the movie Fame was, and I saw Fame in 1980. Of course, Greg was just born. And, of course, I saw the show that came afterwards in the early 80s. My friend Matt went there for graphic design. It is probably the top school for arts in New York City. Probably like Juilliard, I'd say, a little maybe below. But for, School of Visual Arts, nothing wrong with that. You know, in my case, I would like to see the women artists, and try to hit on them. Anyway, Greg's award-winning sports work has appeared in juried shows and museums nationwide, as well as having been featured in nationally distributed books, newspapers, magazines, and both internet and television featurettes. To Greg, no other sport embodies the relationship between generations and a sense of community like baseball. And he's actually absolutely correct on that. Baseball is like a religion. His goal is to portray the national pastime in any era when players were accessibly human, and the atmosphere of a cozy ballpark was just as important as what happened on the field. On a side note, I'm lucky to be living up here, Massachusetts. We kept Fenway Park since 1912. Still a lot cozier. Been to the new Yankee Stadium. Very cold, very corporate, very Steinbrennerish. So I still like the coziness of Fenway Park. I'm yet to get to Wrigley, but I'll get there one day. He's proud to act as a visual historian, which he is, recreating a history that has never been experienced yet. Like millions of fans, maintains a profound connection with. And without any further ado, welcome to the show, Graig Kreindler.
Hello, Ian. Hello, everybody.
No, this is great. It's great having you. I did my homework on you. I saw a whole bunch of things. I did. I liked your little interview on sports life in New York City, and went through all about providing value. Baseball. Why is it important to you? How did it become important to you? And why this over other sports?
Ooh,
I told you you're gonna think on my questions. It's just not, what do you do for painting? What is
yeah.
I'm gonna make you think. That's the problem. I'm an attorney. I gotta cross-examine you. This isn't choreographed. It's right off the cuff. That's what makes my show so beautiful. You're scared to answer. So let's hear it. Why baseball over other sports? Because, on your website, you do have paintings of other sports. It's a category there. But you have three, categories on baseball, and then you have other sports. Why baseball?
Well, it kind of started with my dad. I mean, really my whole family, but more so my dad, who he was born in the mid-'40s, and he grew up a Yankee fan, and he was really a fan of all the four major sports, but I think he gravitated towards baseball more than any of the others. And he would take my brother and I to games at Yankee Stadium, and we would watch stuff on television, and of course he would play with us in our backyard in Rockland County, and it just seemed like that was kind of the sport that he had the most meaningful connection to, and that he was kind of, sharing with us. And I guess it didn't hurt that he still had a lot of the old baseball cards that he collected when he was a kid. His mom threw out plenty. But there were some that she missed, and he used to show them to me, and I would be fascinated by these illustrated cards, like these old Bowman cards and some of the old Topps cards, and he'd be like, oh, well, here's a Mickey Mantle, rookie, and Mickey Mantle was my hero, and it's just all of these stories seem so, they just seem so real to me, and he had similar heroes in other sports, but they weren't as, as vibrant to me as the ones in baseball. So I think I kind of just gravitated more towards those guys than, or not even those guys, but more towards baseball than any of the other sports that I learned about.
Now, of course, up in Rockland County, you're closer to the Bronx than you are of Queens. Mainly Yankee fans up there, or you got a few Mets fans scattered around?
Well, you have both. I grew up with a lot of my friends ended up being Mets fans, actually, because, we were all around the same age, and I guess when they were 6, 7, 8 years old, I mean, that's when the Mets kind of owned New York. And the Yankees, well, I mean, they weren't necessarily bad, but there wasn't, a heck of a lot to talk about, certainly nothing in regards to playoff baseball. So I think most of my friends at the time were Mets fans. But I want to say it was about half and half, I think, maybe.
Well, you know what's interesting? Now, you were born in 1980, and the Yankees only went to one World Series during the 80s, the 81 season, the shortened strike season. Now,
right.
What's interesting is the Mets were always in the hunt, including winning the 86th World Series, who I had the author Eric Sherman on my show the other day. He interviewed all the ex-Met players. But if you look at your history, the Yankees had the most winningest record in the 1980s, yet never clinched a playoff.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, they would in today's playoff format, but back then, the Yankees were second fiddle to the Mets when the Mets went wild. And I lived back in New York City in those days, and I'm a huge Yankees fan, like you. My father passed it down. I lived in Brooklyn, which, again, divided between almost evenly Yankees and Mets. And it was a tough time for Yankees. It was even a tougher time when I moved up to Red Sox Nation and wore my Yankees. So if you think
absolutely.
Now people still ask, what the hell are you wearing Yankees? I said, I got an excuse. I grew up 23 years in New York, went to Brooklyn College, and went to the stadium 20 times a year. This is the first year I have eclipsed my time living in Red Sox Nation, going on 24 years, as opposed to 23 years in Brooklyn. Yeah, I'm living longer in New England. My kids, we grow up, they're growing up 5 minutes from, maybe 8 minutes with traffic from Gillette Stadium. I live about 15 minutes from the Pawtucket Red Sox, go to a lot of games there. In Little Leagues up here, you'll have Met teams, you'll have every team, but you'll never see a Yankee team on a Little League field in New England. That's how hated they are. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question. When did your parents and yourself realize you had a God-given talent to draw and paint?
That was kind of early on. I mean, I think they knew. It's interesting that now I can kind of relate this to to my own son now, who just never stops moving. And my mother just told me recently that one of the only things that would actually get me to stop moving when I was his age was for them to give me a pencil or a crayon or something and to draw. So it's interesting connecting those dots. But yeah, I mean, I started pretty early on. Probably. I must have been 4 or so when I was just really, I guess, drawing a lot more than maybe other kids. And it was probably around then that they at least noticed that it was something that I really enjoyed doing, and I guess maybe had some sort of, talent for. And, they always kind of encouraged it, which is great. And, I thankfully they did, because I know that, as you kind of get older, I know that you kind of need that support, you need that encouragement from your family, especially in the arts, to not even succeed, but just to, feel happy with it, because it's like such a such a different path to kind of go down than, I guess, the quote-unquote normal. So, yeah, I mean, it all kind of just started pretty early on.
And let me ask you this question. Did you go to the public schools in Rockland County, or you went to private school up there?
Public schools, yes.
And let me ask you this question. They do have art classes and stuff like that, you know, and for us amateurs. I remember that. I remember that in junior high school, along with typing class when you were on a typewriter. You didn't have that.
Oh, man. You're dating yourself now?
I'm an old chestnut. I remember when the PC came out for the first time, Radio Shack's Tandy in 1981. You were a year old. I'm dating myself. So this is what happens. Like, you know, you have one kid, you're having another one. The years will fly by, and they're going to be using glasses, I think, is for the future. And they'll look at our smartphones. So what the hell is that? You know, because technology just moves that quick. But did your teachers see this gift and try to cultivate it like your parents did?
They did. I remember there was one teacher in particular in my, I guess it's primary school, and you know, maybe first or second grade. I remember she was super supportive of I guess what I was doing, and I know that she used to kind of she used to challenge me, I guess, and that she would kind of just try to get me to draw, you know, different things. And I think at the time I was super into, I guess, knights and things like that. Probably because of all of the trips that my family and I took to you know, the museum of, Metropolitan Museum in the city, and you know, you'd go into the armory room and you'd see all those knights on the horses and you know, on all the swords and everything, and I love that stuff. So I think she kind of gave me a couple of books to, I guess, copy some of the drawings from, and you know, she let me keep it. I think I don't remember whether I had a cubby or you know, whether she just kind of, you know, let me borrow it for an extended period of time. But yeah, I mean, she was super supportive, and I mean, it did nothing but, you know, kind of inspire me to just draw everything.
Now, as you're growing up, you know, and now you're in high school, and you're thinking about college, and you know, all these wonderful guidance counselors with their infinite wisdom.
Oh, yes.
With their infinite, they told me you're never going to make something of yourself. Well, you know, I was a bad
there you
boy.
go.
I was a bad boy with an A average. You know, you know, they said you have a destructive way. You didn't know what was going on at home. My parents got a divorce. My father wasn't given child support, and they just said you just mouth off. In fact, I skipped my English literature class 48 times.
Oh my.
Oh yeah, I told the teacher to go to hell. I came in for the midterm, and the final I had 110 average, and she gave me an 85 because I missed 48 classes.
Oh, my.
I told her I could teach this class better than you. I was 16. I said,
nice.
well, you know, my gift, the problem with my gift was, you know, I had a brain, which, again, I attribute to God. That's the only thing that got me out of the ghetto because, you know, came from a broken family, grew up in the ghetto, was always in some sort of a fight or something else. But you know, I went to 32 years of schooling, you know, law degree
right.
and 3 masters. And it got me out of New York City, and it got me here where I am today. But I always had a punk-ass attitude, you know. You know, I'm polite, and you learn how to be, you know, a salesperson by being an attorney, and you win your cases. But I was always punk-ass. Even now, it's like the street mentality. When someone's like looking at me and they start in, I don't say, you know, hey, I'm a lawyer, leave me alone. I'm like ready to just floor him and take my chances in jail and let my wife go to jail. You know,
well, you came from Brooklyn, so there you go.
Let me give you an example. I was at a Providence Bruins game last year, and that was my first time out after surgery back then. I had another surgery later in the year, and I'm hobbling to get back to my kids with food. And, it's like Madison Square Garden. You got to go up the aisles. And this one woman who was in her 50s got pissed off. And she the period started, and I wasn't moving quick enough for her. And I have my crutches and all this stuff, and I'm hobbling. And she's like, "Get the F out of the way." I just stopped. I said, "Well, want to come down here and tell it to me in my face?" She did. She started screaming at me. I said, "Lady, I counted 3, and otherwise you're going down the stairs real quick." And so I said, "Why don't you get your husband over here to fight me instead?" And you're talking to a cripple. Everyone's yelling at this woman to get away from me because they see I'm pretty much crippled. So she goes and tells the police officer, and now I got a gang of cops around me, right? Newspaper reporters are like looking in to see what's up. My wife comes back from the bathroom and sees me surrounded by cops, and they're like,
"Oh,
"Hey,
man."
They're like, "Hey, Bob, just keep quiet, okay? She's out of her mind. I'm going to get you into the handicap section all the way in front for you and your family, all right? Take it easy. We know there's a problem. Just keep your mouth shut." So they did, and we ended up having front row seats. But my wife kept nagging me, "Do you think anyone saw you? Do you think you're going to be in the newspaper?" She's like, "You can't be doing this after 22 years of dating me. What the hell? This isn't Brooklyn." So it still remains with me. But let me ask you this question. Because, you're starting with me. You never know what you're going to get. Either I'm going to try to analyze you to death, or I'll just clock you. I'm 6'3" and weigh 250. So, one of the two. I'll just run you over. But the thing is, now you're in high school, and you're
right.
And you're thinking about a career. About what age did it dawn on you that, hey, this is what I want to do?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the interesting thing. In high school, I wouldn't say that I was a punk or anything like that, but I cut my share of school plenty of times, and spent many early morning hours at places like IHOP and Denny's rather than going to school, which obviously sounds incredibly dangerous and daring. But at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was thinking of art as a career, but it was kind of something that I thought I was going to maybe fall back on in a way, because at the time I wasn't super interested in any specific kind of art. I think at that point, I was a teenager, and I guess I just had kind of like other things on my mind, and I was like, oh well, I'm decent at drawing, so maybe I'll just become an artist and I'll fall into that, not really realizing that that's not how you really get into that stuff for the most part. And it wasn't really until I'd say maybe my junior year of high school that I guess I started to just really pay attention to I guess what it was that I thought I might have wanted to do with my life after high school, in college and whatnot. And it was around that time that I randomly, I guess through my mother, who I think I had mentioned to you the other day that my mother was a teacher in the Bronx. She taught with someone whose son was a book cover illustrator in like the science fiction and fantasy genre. And because at the time I was still kind of into that stuff, mostly like the imagery, more than, any of the stories or anything like that. But I met him, and he had been a professional in the business for, I don't know, maybe 7-8 years at that point. And he was still young. He was like in his, mid-20s, late 20s at that point. And he kind of showed me, what was what. And I met him and became his, I guess, apprentice. And I learned so much from him. And I was kind of like, at that point, he went to the School of Visual Arts. And I was like, okay, well, if he went to the School of Visual Arts, then I'm going to go to the School of Visual Arts. And that's kind of how that happened. It wasn't even a place that I necessarily did a ton of research on or anything. It was just like, well, if it's good enough for this guy, then it's good enough for me. And I'm gonna do what he's doing. I'm gonna be a book cover illustrator, and you know, I'm gonna do science fiction and fantasy themed things. And I mean, I'm kind of ashamed to say it, but baseball wasn't even really a blip on the radar at that point, especially in terms of my art. And that didn't really happen until my last year at SVA.
And let me ask you, when you were at SVA, did, besides apprenticing, which is probably more important than I think just going in, learning theory, but also crafting a distinct style and getting hands-on experience. But that's my opinion. I went to law school, and you take everything and just throw it out and start new when you
Right.
become an apprentice at a lawyer. So for a lawyer, did the School of Visual Arts hone in on technique and design and what you should be thinking about in the different styles, how you're going to paint something, and give you a different kind of outlook on what following a project from finish to end?
Very much so. And I mean, it was kind of through. I mean, it was again kind of through through luck that I kind of stumbled onto this, because I would go to the School of Visual Arts, and because of the guy that I apprenticed under, I ended up majoring in illustration, which is basically most forms of I guess, commercial art kind of fall under that umbrella. Had I just randomly went to SVA without meeting this guy Kevin, the guy who I apprenticed for, I probably would have ended up being somewhere in the fine art department, because I'm thinking, okay, painting and drawing. The difference is in illustration, they teach you the discipline of making commercial art, and that means you kind of learn how to paint and draw academically. You learn how to compose pictures. You learn how to sell yourself somewhat. It was kind of like it was preparing you for a job. I think more so than, say, the fine art department, which I think they just kind of give you the space and some of the tools to kind of express yourself. And I'm not saying that you didn't learn there, but I think the learning in the illustration department was a bit more focused. And without that, without meeting the professors that I met in that department, I mean, no way would I be where I am now. I mean, that completely shaped me. I mean, it's like I can think of these different moments where I'd be signing up for a class or even just deciding to pick my major, and some of it was just kind of blind luck, and had I made a different decision, things just would have been completely different for me. I have no idea where I would be right now.
I love that answer. That is something cool. But let me ask you this question. What prompted you to go for your master's in art education from Lehman College? I mean, wouldn't the School of Visual Arts just have been enough to get out there, get a job, and then do things? Why a master's in art education?
Well, the thing is, what I think a lot of people might not understand, like the people who go to places like SVA, they might not understand is, if you graduate from there, you get your BFA or whatever, and let's say you're getting your BFA in illustration. As soon as school is over, the people who are your teachers, these people who are working professionals, those people are now your competition. And you're kind of thrown to the lions in that you're competing with them for the same jobs. You're a 20, 21, 22-year-old kid who, who's been honing his or her craft for a couple of years, and all of a sudden you're pit up against a 35-year veteran. And it takes a long time to kind of get on your feet. It takes a long time to even come to terms with the fact that the security blanket of school is gone. And I think for most of the people who make a living as artists, I mean, it takes a long time to establish yourself. It takes a long time to get jobs, to realize what you have to do to get jobs, to kind of carve out like your own language of, I guess in my case, picture making, like what kind of pictures I want to make, what themes I want to explore. It's one of my teachers said that that graduating from SVA is kind of like you're just kind of given a license to be an artist, and it's like now the real journey begins. And I did it. I mean, I lived at home with my parents right after school, who again, remained ever supportive. And I painted every day. I sent out queries to art directors, to editors, to everyone. I mean, I was making these promotional packages. And, you'd spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, doing all this stuff and spending loads and loads of time. And, I'd get a job here and there, but, nothing to really sustain, a lifestyle. Thankfully, I, again, was living at home, so it's kind of like the upkeep wasn't terribly high in terms of cost, but it was just kind of like a slow burn. And I didn't know if things were ever going to really pick up, and I kind of lost a bit of confidence. And I thought, all right, well, I still love doing this. I still love making these pictures. At the time, I was starting to kind of focus on baseball stuff. But yeah, even though I still loved it, I just felt like I had to maybe start exploring another option. And, like I said, my mom and dad were both teachers in the Bronx for, 30, 35 years. I figured, okay, well, maybe teaching is in my blood. Maybe it's something that I could do, something that I could enjoy. And that was kind of what prompted me to go to Lehman and get a master's in art ed. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was hard work. It was a different kind of work than I had been used to. And I got certified to teach and everything. And I graduated, and then the art actually started taking off. So I did not end up even looking for a job. I was kind of able to just paint after that.
And let me ask you this. Was it just the baseball stuff you were painting at the time and that was selling, or was it a different kind of artwork that you were painting?
No, it was just the baseball. I had enjoyed doing the other stuff somewhat, but it didn't tug on my heartstrings like baseball did. And I guess while I was at Lehman, I was also just kind of focusing on the baseball stuff. And I wasn't necessarily getting any sales, but I was getting more and more people kind of interested in what I was doing. And it was because of a bit of press that I got literally like the last month or so that I was at Lehman that kind of catapulted it. I got written up by a writer for the New York Times, and I was in the like the Sunday art section, and it's like the dream. And I'm like this 27-year-old kid who's doing these baseball paintings, and I'm like, what the hell? This is reserved for is reserved for important artists. This is reserved for legends and things like that. I have no business being in the New York Times, but I was in there, and that really, really helped things along.
And let me ask you this, how long did it take you, like you were saying, it was a slow burn to get the career off, but when your paintings did start selling, how long did it take that, hey, I can support myself, I'm making a decent living out of this, and you're becoming, self-sufficient?
I think from that point, I would say, it was probably about 3 or 4 years where I kind of started to feel like I could make a living. I don't want to give the impression that, it was like this windfall of money, because it definitely wasn't, and it still isn't. But I was able to kind of, it's like I was able to kind of start my life, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes sense. Going through all these years of schooling, I was able to start my life and then go back to school. Oh, I know. You're just wrapped up into the thought, when is this going to finally happen? When is this going to finally happen?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and the waiting was the hardest part, just like Tom Petty said. It's the waiting. Now, let me ask you this. What was the first baseball painting that you painted, and why did you paint it?
The first baseball painting. So when I was younger, I had mentioned, my father's baseball card collection.
Mm-hmm.
I would copy a lot of the images that were on those cards, not with painting, but with like pencil and crayon and maybe color pencil. So, I was copying his Mickey Mantle rookie, his Bowman rookie. I was copying the Topps rookie. I was just trying to kind of create these. They weren't even works of art. I mean, they were just, to me, they were just drawings of these guys. And it was kind of like for my dad's approval, in a way. Not that I, had to prove anything to him, but I just kind of wanted to do something that would kind of make him smile. And I didn't really do a serious, quote unquote serious baseball painting until my last year at SVA. And the reason I did it was because we were given an assignment in my portfolio class, which is kind of like your main your main class for picture making, and what kind of drives your work for the year. And the teacher gave us the assignment of illustrating a relationship. He would always kind of give us these very open-ended tasks so you can kind of run with it wherever you want to go. And so, illustrate a relationship. For some reason, I have absolutely no idea why. For some reason, I thought of the relationship between a pitcher and a batter. And I thought, okay, well, that might be kind of fun to do. And you know what? I did all those drawings when I was younger and, tried to make my dad smile. Why don't I do the painting of Mickey Mantle? Mickey Mantle's his hero. And that wasn't enough. It was kind of like, okay, well, if I'm going to do Mickey Mantle, then this painting, it has to look like Mickey Mantle. And it has to look like Mickey Mantle's batting stance. And I don't just want to put him in a random ball yard. It has to be the right looking ball yard. It has to be a ball yard that he played in. I kind of like decided, okay, I was going to look at images of Mickey Mantle and see what I can find and see if kind of like anything inspired me. And I found this, great photograph of him batting, and the image was a photograph that was taken from behind home plate at Yankee Stadium. And I saw it and I was like, okay, that's cool. But for whatever reason, I don't know why, I kind of wanted to put him in a different stadium. So I figured, okay, well, you know what? My mom grew up a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. Why don't I put him in Ebbets Field? You know, it's a World Series game. And I just kind of, I kind of like got even more specific about it. And I decided, okay, it's going to be from this year, this World Series, this game. You know, he hit a home run off of this pitcher. And to kind of create that illusion, I knew that I had to continue to be specific with what I was depicting in terms of, you know, what the ballpark looked like, what Ebbets Field looked like during this particular year, during this particular World Series, during this particular day. You know, what was the weather like? You know, was it sunny? Was it overcast? What time of day did it happen? And that's kind of how it started. And I got so into it and so enjoyed the entire process. And that kind of was when something like really clicked. And, you know, the painting turned out, at the time, it was, you know, probably the best thing I had done. And, you know, everybody in the class and the professor, you know, really liked it, and they thought it was, you know, a big improvement from what I had been doing before. And you know, more importantly, my parents loved it. And I guess I loved it too. And that was it. Like that was where it all kind of started, I think.
Now, on your website, in the gallery section, you break up your paintings into large works, small works, panoramics, studies, and other sports. Do you particularly paint, like you say, hey, you know, today I'm going to paint so-and-so. It's going to go into the large works. How do you decipher between, you know, what's going to go into one of these categories?
Well, it's kind of like the categories are just kind of like a secondary. They're like a result of what I end up painting. So I'm not necessarily thinking, okay, I want to paint, you know, a ballpark panoramic today, and it's going to fit into that section. It's just kind of like whatever jobs, whatever commissions I might have, or whatever paintings I'm doing for myself. You know, whenever they're done, they just happen to fall in whatever category they fall in. But I do try to keep track of what I'm putting in each gallery, in that I might say, you know, okay, I'm a Yankee fan, and a lot of my clients are Yankee fans, and I get commissioned to do a lot of paintings of, you know, Mantle and Ruth and Gehrig and DiMaggio, and you know, maybe it's a bit Yankee heavy. So maybe if I'm doing some paintings for myself, maybe I don't want to make them Yankees. Maybe I want to do, you know, a Mets painting or New York Giants, or go back even further, you know, into like the 19th century, and you know, do like the New York Gothams or something like that. And I try to make it somewhat balanced. It's not very balanced right now. I mean, it's like there are a lot of eras that are pretty underrepresented. I don't have many images or many paintings that I've done from the 80s or the 70s or the 90s. And, you know, maybe there's kind of like an overabundance of dead ball stuff. I mean, you know, maybe for some people it's an overabundance. For me, it's never enough. But yeah, I try to have a little bit of a balance, because I do want to paint as much stuff as I can. I want to paint as many eras as I can and as many players as I can. It's kind of like, you know, the game has such a rich tapestry, and you know, the history of it in its entirety, I just feel is just so incredibly important to depict to me, that I just have to do it all.
And you know, you touch upon two, you know, subjects that are very, very important to me and important to baseball: the dead ball era, and even the pre-dead ball era. I've seen you've had paintings like the Mighty Casey,
Right.
and you go way back, like you said, the New York Gothams. We're going back to like the 1840s right there and the 1850s. But also the Negro Leagues.
Yeah.
And both of them very important to the institution of what we now know as modern baseball. Now, did you just wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I need to incorporate some Negro League paintings, and or were you commissioned to do it?
Both, actually. The thing is, like I had mentioned before, the majority of my clients who do pick kind of Yankee players for me to paint, I'd say the majority of them are not asking for the black players or any non-white players, and it's not necessarily. It has nothing to do with anything they feel about race or anything like that. It just so happens that the players that they love and that are so well known in baseball, I think, are just these players who were playing in a segregated league. And I always thought that there was kind of there was an injustice to that, and the quality of ball that was played in the Negro Leagues and the Cuban leagues, I mean, is stuff that most baseball fans don't know anything about. I mean, sure, everybody kind of knows, Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige, but I feel like the majority of baseball fans, and we're talking not necessarily, your fair weather baseball fans. We're talking about people who are like lifelong baseball fans. Their knowledge of those players doesn't really stretch too far beyond people like that. And it just so happens that, I very recently had a client who is a big, like, Negro and Cuban League collector. And he commissioned, a lot. Let's say it's over 100, over 100 color studies of just kind of stars from that era. And we're kind of like working on this project together. I can't divulge too many details about it because it's something that is going to be possibly used in a traveling exhibit of basically like his memorabilia and these paintings that I've done for him and some paintings from a few other artists. But he's kind of in talks with the estates of like Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and some of the other guys, and he's going to try to market products from this. So that's kind of why I can't really talk too much about it. But it's just this large project where I get to paint all of these guys that I'd say 90% of them I've never heard of, whether they're from the 20s or the 19th century, and even some guys from the 40s and 50s I didn't even know. And I'm able to kind of get myself an education and also possibly educate others about these players and what things were like back then for players like them.
How long does it take you? Now, I know the answer is going to be it depends. But to paint something, as detailed as, like I'll give you an example. Sandy's No-No. Love
Right.
Sandy's No. Love it. It just looks like that photograph of, and then, of course, my favorite point in Yankee history was Don Larson's perfect game, which you here. And Babe Ruth, when he's about to die, he's a gray-haired old man. He's not old, he's 53. But
yeah, right.
Well, yeah, he looks about 90, and shows you the kind of lifestyle he led. He had throat cancer and all this. But you capture the moment. Just like you spoke to me earlier about baseball cards. When you look at a baseball card, that's a snapshot, a pinpoint in time. Your
Right.
artwork is a pinpoint in time. How long does it usually take you, to create? I'll even go as far as to say that kind of masterpiece.
Oh, well, thank you. um, it varies from piece to piece. It usually has to do with the size and complexity more than anything. What's nice about doing paintings, these baseball paintings, is that I never have to really mine for inspiration. I'm kind of like always. It's like there's always like tons and tons and tons, literally hundreds of paintings that I want to do. So that never really kind of figures into the timing equation. But so like right now, as I talk to you, I'm painting. I'm working on a large panoramic of Lou Gehrig's Day, and it's painting is it's 48. I think it's like 48 by 84. So it's like 4 feet by was that like 7.5 feet, and it's large, and you have multi like I don't even know how many figures I have in this, but just tons of figures that I'm working with. A painting like this could take months to finish. Sometimes there's one painting that I finished recently for a client that was a team shot of the 1927 Yankees. That it was large and it was really complicated in that I had 31 ball players who were like the center of attention, all of whom were wearing pinstripes, that are pinstripes that are not just straight lines. These are lines that are kind of folding and undulating in space. And then behind them, you have, the architecture of Yankee Stadium. And then you have a crowd in Yankee Stadium. This painting, I'm kind of embarrassed as to how long it took, but let's just say that it took years to finish. And it's like a labor of love. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love it.
That's true. Let me ask you,
Yeah.
a lot of your paintings, go pretty much are photographs, like the Don Larson one and the Sand.
Right.
Now, let me ask you: do you keep that photograph by you while you're constructing it, and just like constantly looking at it, and then getting the feed in your mind to create that image in the paint that you do, or do you just look at it maybe once or twice, get the image in your mind, and then throw it onto the canvas?
It's a little of both. It's probably more so of the former than the latter. The reason being, a lot of my clients, they not only are in love with, say, a moment, but they're in love with a particular depiction of the moment. And usually that depiction is kind of shaped by a single photograph. Like, let me think of an example. Like, there's that famous image of Ty Cobb sliding into third base, the Charles Conlon image. So with that image, when I was painting that, it's something that, I would kind of keep close to me pretty much the entire time that I'm working on it. And I'm kind of, I'm constantly looking at it and trying to kind of translate what's on the photograph onto what is going to make it onto the canvas, in color. There is kind of like a process or a number of processes that kind of occur, I guess, in my head and then eventually onto the canvas that I guess allow me to do that. It's a lot of mental gymnastics, drawing from stuff that I've kind of observed through life, stuff that I've read about, stuff that I take notes about, and when it comes to that, it's like I can put the photograph away a bit and come back to those kind of things and then just paint. But I think more often than not, I'm just working from a photograph and I'm trying to get as much of the visual information from it that I can, and trying to get it almost exactly what's on the photograph onto the canvas, and then I can kind of go off on whatever tangents I have to go off on and make whatever adjustments I need to make.
Let me ask you this, and me not being an artist, and if I was an artist, I'd probably be in competition with you.
Damn you!
Yeah, damn you! You're trying to take my profits away. Let me ask you this. Picasso had a Cubanist, he was part of the Cubanist movement. We had Gothic, we had Renaissance. Where does your paintings fall into a certain kind of category? What would be the label, the kind of genre of where your paintings fall into?
That's a tough question. I don't know exactly. When I first started out, I was a bit looser than I am right now, and I was a bit more, I guess you might call it impressionistic or expressionistic with how I applied paint and how I used color. I still retain some of that, but I feel like I've tried to tighten things up over the years. I can't quite say where I fall. I think a lot of people think of me, if they think of me, that is, then they think of me as maybe, maybe a realist or a photorealist. I'm not sure. To be honest, I try not to think too hard about it, only because I try to just focus on what I'm doing, I guess, and what I'm painting and kind of how I want things to look. And I guess, it's up to, other people to kind of put me wherever they want to put me. Going back to Norman Rockwell, I think he struggled, throughout his life. He was an illustrator who was, a god as far as I'm concerned, and I think there was some struggle in his life to be taken as a quote unquote serious artist, and I think to this day there's still people who don't consider him a serious fine artist, but I try to not think of it in those terms. Sometimes I fail, but I try not to think of it that way, only because it's almost like it's something that I don't necessarily have much control over. But I don't know. I guess if you want to put me into school, then maybe just maybe photorealism might be where I'd fit.
All right, and with any overtones of like impressionism and
yeah,
because
impressionism.
There are different genres that come into your painting. If you look at it like I do, like I'm an obsessive compulsive disorder, looking at your painting upside down, sideways, trying.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I do the gamut with you, trying to look for anything like maybe you have hidden meanings behind it. Maybe it's something.
No.
But
nothing too that deep.
But as for Rockwell, you said people don't consider him this great. They will go ask the Saturday Evening Post and see how much they made off of him, and not to mention the Norman Rockwell Museum up in Springfield, Massachusetts. Let me ask you this, because when you paint, and granted, sometimes you got to paint for commission, you want to teach. Now, on your website, what struck me is there's not a narrative after every painting. It says narrative coming soon, and some you have a narrative, which is great. Now, I'm not trying to hinder you. I'm not trying to embarrass you. Why do some of these have the narrative and then some of them don't? Because I would think, hey, I'm painting, Buster and the Babe, or I'm painting, the Deepening Depression. They don't have a narrative, but yet other works do. Do you first do the work and then you supply the narrative, or does it come much later after it's proven to sell, or, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, that's that's me. Well, all right. It's not me being lazy. It's me just having a lot of trouble finding the time to do it. It's never, the narrative is usually in my head while I'm working on a particular piece. And what I would try to do is when I'm writing those things, it's very painting specific. And, if there's like a game that I'm depicting, I kind of want to talk about that game in relation to, the player's career or the season he's having or whatever. And I'm so long-winded, as anyone who knows me will point out, brevity is just not my strong suit. So these things end up going on and on forever, just like I do, and I can't get them done in time. And it's kind of like, all right, I need to do these narratives, but what's more important? Do I need to paint and get those done and make these clients happy, or is it just kind of like dressing for the website? Well, usually painting wins out, but the narrative stuff is super important to me. It's just stuff that I think needs to be there. I just wish I had time to do it. I keep telling myself that eventually I'm going to catch up. I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
Not with another kid on the way. Not the end of it. Let me ask you this, because you go onto your website and it's fantastic. You just scroll through the hundreds.
Oh, thank you.
and you go through all this stuff. Where is all this stuff housed?
Oh, well, that's a good question. All right. Well, I'm extremely lucky in that I'd say, at least half or maybe more than half of what is on there has been sold or, was commissioned. So it would be housed in the collector's house or office or wherever. I do have some paintings here in my apartment in Brooklyn. Space is at a premium right now, so I'm currently running out of it very quickly. I'd say the majority of the rest of the stuff is housed in Bronxville, New York, which is where my agent is. My agent has a gallery in Bronxville and plenty of wall space, and he holds on to a lot of those paintings, waiting to sell them or hoping to sell them. So yeah, I'd say most of them that aren't sold are in Bronxville.
Let me ask you this. Your paintings have been spoken about. You've been all over the news. People like Ty Cobb's granddaughter, Cindy Cobb, says, you and a few other painters, you're the masters. When do we see the Graig Kreindler Museum of Baseball Art?
Oh man, that would be killer. I don't know. I hope sometime down the line something like that happens. We're trying right now I know my agent is kind of like always looking for the right opportunity to put out a book of my stuff. And the project that I'm doing with the fella who commissioned all the Negro and Cuban League stuff, I know he's going to be putting out a book with my work. The problem with all that stuff is they're all kind of like it's legal red tape that you kind of have to jump through because of all the different IPs that I guess I represent in these paintings. Because it's one thing to kind of sell an original painting, but once you start using it commercially, like in a book or for prints, that's when you kind of run into those hurdles. So it's taken a while to get stuff like that going. I'm hoping that in the future it happens. I really am, and people are trying to make it happen. But yeah, I wish I could give you an exact date for when something like that would be happening. That would make me very happy.
But your artwork, and you could do something like like the Negro League museums. And what they do is, you got a brick and mortar place to house your art. I don't know if you make replicas of them or you have, it's hard enough just painting one for, an X amount of time. But if it would be replica, you can make replicas or copies of it and send it on tour. You have your roving, baseball art, and you can go, there's plenty of stadiums out there, even minor league ballparks to showcase it in an area, a space, and, people will come and pay, I don't know, X amount of dollars and hear you speak. And, you do stuff that way. So, I don't know. Those are my...
Yeah, well, that's actually happening with the Negro League stuff. So this collector, one of the reasons he's putting this together is to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the forming of the Negro National Leagues. So in 2020, I think it's 2020. It's either 19 or 20, but I think it's 20. This exhibit is going to be at the Negro League Museum, and it's going to tour the country, possibly at the Yogi Berra Museum. We're still in talks with a lot of other places, but the only one that seems to be, I think, pretty rock solid right now is the Negro League Museum. So it's happening, but it's all slowly happening.
Yeah. It's definitely thought-provoking, your paintings, and it's just not one to be just analyzed. It's one to really, do research on. It jogs an admirer, a collector's mind, saying, well, look at the Baltimore Orioles 1966 victory. When you have, is that Brooks Robinson jumping up in the air?
Yes. Yeah. Etchebarren and yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's this picture about? If I don't see a narrator there, I'm definitely gonna go look on the internet and see what's going on. So
right.
Your paintings do jog a person's interest in a particular subject, whether it be dead ball era, 19th century era, Negro leagues, Cuban leagues, Mexican leagues, all the leagues I talk about and that maybe people don't know. Your paintings are definitely a very important part of baseball history learning, and
thank you.
That's the biggest thrill I get out of your paintings. Now let me ask you this last question. The New York Yankees, 2017, they're looking pretty good, aren't they?
They're looking a lot better than I thought they'd be looking.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, I posted something in my history of the New York Yankees today saying, with Aaron Hicks being the fourth outfielder, batting like 370, it's making Cashman look like a genius, and all of us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy.
I'm looking at these guys, and I'm like, wow.
Are you getting any inklings from people or feelers to say, hey, let's start painting the 2017 Yankees. Might be something.
Well, I haven't yet. I mean, there's been a lot of talk, surrounding Judge, obviously, and what he's been doing so far. But there haven't been any clients who have necessarily brought anything up. I think if I have time, I would like to maybe do something. If if at all possible. Even yeah.
Once August comes, and you have your second
over.
baby, and that's it. September's going to come, and you're going to be sleeping through the ALCS, the ALDS, and World
I'm going to
Series
miss the entire thing.
I missed the greatest Super Bowl when the Giants beat the Patriots, and my sons were 2 months old, 2.5 months old.
Oh man.
And I said, I went to bed at halftime with Tom Petty, because I've seen him about 10 times. And I woke up at midnight for a feeding. And I said, okay, little buddy, let's go see how bad the Giants lost.
Yeah.
It's like post-mortem. I'm like, what the hell happened? We beat them. Oh, my God, I missed the greatest Super Bowl. We beat the undefeated Patriots. And, of course, I live up here. Now that guy is the biggest Patriots fan. It looks like Teddy Bruschi.
Oh, man.
Over. And by the way, I see Bruschi. He goes to my church, but I think it's...
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's the nicest. He's the nicest guy, and he has wonderful kids. Hey, it's just I live in the wrong area.
Listen, if you've passed, you said what, 20? It's been 24 years now that you've been up there.
Yeah. I just
so. Would you officially describe yourself as a New Englander now?
No, and I'll tell you why. When I first came here, and I said, "Wow, now I'm a New Englander," and people have told me, "You're not a New Englander until you at least have 5 generations living here in New England." It's that old story.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I'm still considered a newbie. I still stick out like a sore thumb with my New York attitude, even after all these years. It's such a different climate. And I'll tell you one thing, though. Living up here in Boston, near Boston, and you get the accent, you get all the stuff. I always say it. The Red Sox fans are the most dedicated, the most educated fans in all of baseball. Now, racism runs deep here, as you saw last week.
Of course.
Up in Fenway Park. That is true. That is true. However, you're not only talking about a city, like New York City. You got 2 teams, or Chicago or St. Louis, and they divide the state with Kansas City, and you got Texas. You got 2 teams down there. New England. All 6 states up to the Milford line near, Hartford and New Haven, east, all the way up to Maine, and that's near Canada, is Red Sox Nation. So you're talking about 6 states. You're talking about 6 states. You are talking about a kind of, they're far beyond a cult. It's a religion up here. And I would equate it, as you know, to the Brooklyn Dodgers. It's that kind of dedication. It's that kind of thing that flows through New Englanders' blood up here. And I've never seen it before. With the Yankees and Mets, you could be on the street, and then you got people who, jump the bandwagon. Oh, you're a bandwagon. You were rooting for the Mets because the Yankees.
Of course.
But no, up here, they live and die by the Red Sox. And I've never seen anything like it. I still hate the Red Sox, but my kids are like, we're going to convert to the Red Sox. You've been there a long time. And I said, I'm not. What are you, nuts? and they're watching the Red Sox game on the big screen TV, and on my phone I got the free T-Mobile stuff, and so I'm watching the Yes Network. And the Yankees on my phone.
Well, listen, you don't just change your allegiance like that. I mean, especially at your age, I'm not, saying that you're old, but,
I am old! I'm old! Wait till you have your second kid, you become old.
Yeah, but, I mean, you know how it is. I mean, these loyalties, they're just that. They are loyalties. You don't just say, oh, well, I'm done with this team. You know, it's like you grow up with them and you change with them, and I think, I mean, especially with the Red Sox, everything that I've read and what people have told me, it's so much like the Brooklyn Dodgers. I mean, especially, you know, with all the years of futility and you know, the unfortunate luck in the World Series up until recently. It's very different, I imagine. I mean, I think Yankee fans, and, you know, I'm a Yankee fan, and I love the Yankees, but I think a lot of Yankee fans are a bit spoiled, and I think that, you know, it's different.
It's such a different mentality, and you know, I was up here before the big collapse of
2004.
And it was just horrendous. I still never hear the end of it. But you know, it's like yesterday. I had a show with Herb Creen, and he writes for the Red Sox, and he writes for the programs, and he just published a book, the 50th anniversary of the Impossible Dream, 67 season with Yaz and all this. And when you read his book, you realize that Red Sox Nation was really in trouble back in the 60s. The attendance was horrible. 8,000 people showed up to opening day. They was such a horrible team when Williams retired in 60, and it looked like they were going to move to another city. And then you have this season which pretty much ushered in Red Sox Nation. And ever since that time, for 50 years, the dedication and love up here, you can't go anywhere without seeing the Red Sox. And you know, if I grew up in New England, I'd be a diehard Sox fan, and you know, my kids are, and I could see that point of view living here, but they will never see what you and I see, you know, in the city, in back in New York, the arches, what it meant, the rebuilding of Yankee Stadium in the 1970s. The kind of history that it's had, and you know, Red Sox history is mainly depressing, but lately, no, it is. You know, I came here, stupid me. You know, I'm 23 years old. I go to a drink in Faneuil Hall, which is in the heart of Boston, and I'm asking the guy, "Where were you when Bucky Dent hit the home run?" I was on my father's lap in Brooklyn, New York. He forgot I was on the lap, and I flew across the room. He almost slugged me. It's like, you don't talk about this kind of crap, you know, and you know, Bill Buckner and all this stuff, and it was depressing. They lost every World Series in the seventh game, and they lost in the summer of '49 to the Yankees the last, and in '50, Williams got hurt at the All-Star game, and they could have beat the Yankees there and stopped the Yankees for 5, and then they lost in '99 and finally, and lost in 2003 with Aaron Boone, who I had Brett on the show a few months ago. He was talking.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he was announcing the game. Brett's a good guy, you know. He's I have a lot of people. Fritz Peterson from the Yankees, but and that's it. And I hope you had a good time today, Greg. You know, I told you that the questions are going to be very thought provoking.
Oh, absolutely. I had a great time. I kind of wish, you know, that I could stay on forever. I mean, if you want.
I know, so do I, but unfortunately, I got another show at 1 on the New York Giants and the San Francisco Giants ball, and I got to go to the supermarket now and grab my some food for my kids when they come home, because hopefully they'll have a game today, and, you know, I don't know, but besides your website, I have no idea. When you're father, you just take whatever, you know how it is. You just take whatever.
I do now, yeah. I know now.
Yeah. You just take whatever and you just give it up to your kids. Besides your website, where can we find, you know, where can we find you, your contact information, if anyone wants a specialized painting or a museum? Because I got the Historical Negro League Museum from both Birmingham, Alabama, and Kansas City in my groups. I got sports writers. I got everybody who just might want to contact you. Where can we reach you?
Well, I mean, you can go to my website. You can also find me on Facebook, also on Twitter, also on Instagram. I try to post stuff every day. You know, whether it's a painting kind of marking, an anniversary of somebody being born or someone passing away, or if it's just kind of a look onto like the easel to see what I'm working on this particular day. Or, I just kind of try to engage people in some, thought-provoking questions. It's pretty easy to find me, I think. I seem to be all over the place. If you're on social media or you go to the website, then I'll be there.
Well, that's good, and we'll get you back on the show. And if I can't get you on before August, I'll get it you on by spring training. The newborn will be sleeping through the night. But hopefully. You know what I'll do?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. You know what I'll do? I'll call you like at the end of August at 2 in the morning. Hey, Greg, you still up? What's going on? Do I hear feeding? What's going on? I remember those days.
And I will curse you under my breath.
Yeah, some I would deserve it, but some it's gonna be great, and you're gonna have now you're gonna have two future artists. Hold the line, don't
Sure.
This is how I shut down the show, folks. You want good artwork, you want to learn about baseball history, past through portraits, pictures, paintings. Go to Graig Kreindler's website. Definitely worth the travel throughout all of those wonderful paintings. And again, there's 5 categories to go through. It'll keep you hopping for a few hours if you want to just browse through and you want to buy one. Always call Greg, and of course, Greg's paintings are always featured in my my Facebook pages. I can't get enough of them. And that was the show, folks. As always, I am your host, Ian Kahanowitz. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to Graig Kreindler. You've been a very, 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 very good guest today. And
thank you.
Talk about your experience in the art world. And in the immortal words of Edward R. Murrow, good night, folks. Good luck. We'll see you tomorrow.